Okay, we should be live. If you're in the chat watching, please let us know if you can hear us and see us, or at least see my painting here. I'm Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, here with Sarah.
Hello.
And we missed you guys.
I know, it's been 2 weeks.
Oh, I'm so glad to be painting with you guys again today. And we are going to paint this bird nest, and the reference photo is up on my blog, thefrugalcrafter.wordpress.com. There's a link in the video description. And the colors that we're going to use today are sap green, pyrrole red, turquoise, which is a cobalt turquoise, burnt umber, and yellow ochre. And the reason I chose these colors, even though this is a very neutral scene, I want to push the saturation on some of the aspects so that we have a really lively, we have a lively neutral color, so they'll have a little bit more interest and pop to them. This video is brought to you by jerry's.orama.com. I'm using the Turner watercolors, and I'm also using some Mimic watercolor brushes and Fabriano Artistico watercolor paper. But as always, you can use whatever you have at home. I also want to let you know that the creative watercolor course, Angela Farr's class, I did a guest segment for her class. Today's the last day. You can get it for 50% off, and I have a discount link in the video description if you're interested in taking that. And that is for all sorts of crafters and hobbyists to really get into watercolor if you're a beginner and you just want some ideas to use it with your crafting supplies, such as calligraphers and stampers and all of that stuff. All right. Oh, and if you have questions, let us know in the chat. Just type the word question in all caps and then type your question, because we found out that some people's questions were getting booted by the system because they saw all the caps and they thought it was a troll. So,
and again, be patient. I can only do one question at a time, so it may take me a couple of minutes to get to your question. I'm not ignoring anybody by any means.
Oh, right.
And we have over 200 people already.
Holy
so
moly,
I think
that's
it's gonna
awesome.
Be a question day.
That's awesome.
And remember to keep your questions to watercolor specific topics.
Yes, please. I'm just putting out really watery mixes because we're going to be working light to dark today, because if we go in and we start painting too much dark, we are going to lose, our highlights, and we're going to have to build around our highlights today. So I think this will be a really good exercise for people that maybe are having a hard time with that. And you have to really look for our highlights and shadows. I'm starting off with really, really watered down turquoise. And I don't even know if that's, I mean, it's really this light. You may think your monitor just looks really light, but no, it's really this light. And I'm putting some on the top of the eggs. Now I'm going to dip into a little bit of watery, watery, watery burnt umber, and that's going to kind of make a gray. Adding that in there too. We're going for really natural colors here. If you look at the reference photo, if like you can have like kind of skip back and forth between the reference photo, you're going to notice that you're going to be able to see the colors pretty well, I think. My printout isn't as accurate as my monitor was actually for this. Now I'm not going to clean my brush. But I'm going to kind of scrape off the excess, and I'm going to get a little bit of the pyrrole red, which is super strong, so it already has a lot of water in it. Going to add some of that in there. And I'm working on dry paper because I have the paint so watery that I don't need to wet the paper. And I'm going to grab a little yellow ochre. And I need a rag. So I'm just going to wipe it on my jeans because I forgot to grab a rag.
Is there a rag nearby that I can grab?
I thought I had a little roll of paper towels down here, but I don't.
Well, you cleaned up, it looks like. So
yeah,
you got to remember where you put everything.
I gotta stop that. It's a bad habit.
Stop organizing. I do the same thing. You organize, you're like, uh-oh.
Maybe that yellow rag that's
Right
hanging
here?
up on the side. Yeah, that might work. I'll probably need to blot something at some point.
It says dust cloth. That should work just fine.
I think so. Not like I'm dusting anything. I don't think this chance it's got dust on it, because I don't think I've dusted. And I'll just blot a little bit just to make them seem a little rounder. You blot in the center of a round object, and it just makes it feel a little bit rounder. And now, while that's drying, I'm going to skip over to our background area. So we have textured wood, and you guys love doing textured wood on the pear demonstration. So I thought this would be fun to kind of do that again here. I want a really big juicy wash brush. It doesn't matter if you use a flat or a round. This is like one of my favorite brushes. It's a number 30 round. It holds tons of water. It's a faux squirrel from Jerry's Outerama in the Mimic line. And I just like it because it holds so much water. And it comes in the value set. So you can get it either way, on its own or in the value set. Just depends on if you need those other brushes too, because it's usually a little more economical to buy them in the sets than it is on their own, but not if you're not going to use the brushes. So I am wetting the background because we are going to go in with our paint a little bit darker. Do any questions yet?
No, not yet, but we've got a lot of chat going on. We have
good.
249 watching right now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was so glad to
back on the train again.
Yeah, I mean, I was very tempted to just kind of do an impromptu live pastel painting in the middle of the week, but
then your senses came to you.
Then I came to my senses.
Just my thoughts. People are asking if this can be done in acrylic.
You can. You're going to approach it a little bit differently in acrylic. I would recommend in acrylic that I wouldn't even bother tracing or transferring or drawing the nest on to begin with. I would paint your canvas using the colors in the wood, just kind of paint it like you're just painting the whole thing like wood. And then I would go in and I would add the nest on top, kind of build it layer by layer. And in watercolor, we kind of painted a little backwards. We're painting, light to dark, and we have to kind of almost paint forward to backward. I mean, we're doing a background, but we can't paint, we're not going to paint this really dark and then add highlights to it, which would be the kind of easier way to do it, the way you could do it in acrylics or oils. But absolutely, or you could thin down your acrylic paints and paint it just like I'm painting it here, because on paper you can thin your acrylics down.
Bev Roberts, my set of Turners indicates that burnt sienna and burnt umber are both PBR 7. How can that be? Burnt umber does look darker.
It's because the size of the I asked actually Rich Bowden, the spin doctor, about this, because I was thinking, why would I buy two paints for the same pigment number? And he said that because of the size of the particles and probably where they're sourced even, it can make the color appear much different. So there's a lot of PBR 7 colors they range from a chalky gray, blackish brown, all the way to a rich red, burnt sienna brown. So it just has to do with the size of the particles, how finely they're milled, and probably the source of where they came from.
Noah Murphy. Lindsay, I saw your video on the PBO Fantasy Prism paints last week. Last week, and saw some on clearance at Hobby Lobby yesterday and got them and loved them.
Oh, cool.
From $19.99 to $7.19.
Good for you. Have fun with them. They're so expensive at regular price, but they are really neat.
And if you can get them on clearance.
Yeah,
why not?
I saw some demos where people were doing canvases with them, and it was really cool, but people were like emptying the big bottles of paint out on the canvases. It's like, that's really cool looking, but it took you 10 minutes and you probably spent $100 worth of paint. It's like, if I'm using up $100 worth of paint, I want to really spend some time and enjoy it. I mean, I'm sure they're having fun and all, but it's like, holy cow, that's expensive.
Or you just give me $100 and I can paint something for you. Yeah, Olivia W. Hey, Lindsay, what's the warm yellow in this set? I wanted to buy the set, but I knew a lot of the colors I wouldn't like, so I bought open stock. I wonder if that was smart.
I don't think you can go wrong. It's permanent gamboge. And there's also a permanent yellow, which is a very neutral yellow. And then there's Mayan yellow, which is, it's kind of lemon based. I don't like the Mayan colors as much in that set. And you're going to end up with a white and a black in the set. So it just depends. If you know the colors you're going to use, there's nothing wrong with getting them open stock, And because there are only 5 milliliter tubes in this set. So you will go through the ones that you like to use the most fairly quickly. So you probably didn't do any harm by buying open stock, because those are probably the colors in there that you would use up the fastest. And then you have the other colors that maybe you don't use as much, but they're kind of nice to have, because even though you can mix some colors using what you have, sometimes having the pigments different pigments is nice, because they have different effects like granulating and whatnot. Now I'm going to grab in some other colors. I'm going to take some turquoise and mix it right in with that burnt umber. Some of that in there kind of gives it that almost like a mossy looking, mildewy. Wood gets kind of musty and funky, like an old potting bench.
Cami Daniels, colors. She wants to know the colors that are being used.
Right now I've got, I'll show you the swatch again. We've got yellow ochre, burnt umber turquoise, which is a cobalt turquoise, pyrrole red, and sap green. I should have written that down, but I was kind of behind today.
We're also getting back in the loop.
Back in the loop, yeah.
Baru Siva, have you used Neptune quill brush? What is mob/quill brush? Is it just equivalent to wash brush?
A quill is a really big bellied round brush that comes to a point but holds tons of water, like these faux squirrels. Usually quills are made from squirrel. Neptune makes the Neptune line by Princeton is a synthetic version of animal hair brushes. They're all fantastic. I have not used a Neptune quill though, but I've used a lot of the other Neptune brushes and I really like them. So I think you'll be fine. You can use them for washes. You can use them for detail. You can use them for Chinese brush painting. Any place you'd want to use a really juicy wash, the quill is a good option. I'm going with some yellow ochre here. I like to get all the colors that I'm going to use pretty much in the background, even if I'm mixing it down with something, just because it helps the painting have a little more harmony. I got to grab some sap green because I haven't added that anywhere. I don't want it in there too bright because it's going to be kind of that color that we have these grasses in the middle with the green, and I want that to stay kind of the focal point and the fresh, kind of give it a fresh area, but I do want to get that color in here in different places. So we needed to wet the background because otherwise our paints we'd have all these weird hard edges, and I don't want any hard edges in my background until we start to go and do texturing. I want it pretty soft and mottled at this point.
Janine Goodrum Froggy Art. What would you say to someone working on wet blends without the colors graying? I ended up giving up and getting tones by waiting for the paint to dry and layering complementary.
I would say if your colors are muddying, don't mix on the palette, mix right on the paper, because you will get more gray if you mix on the palette because you've already started to mix it. If you put the pure colors down and let them kind of mix into themselves, then you're going to have fresher colors.
Medi Riggs. I purchased some watercolor sponges because Amazon said I needed them, but I don't have the faintest idea on the best way to use them. Help, Lindsay.
Watercolor sponges, are they like a sea sponge maybe? They're probably for dabbing on special effects, like kind of dabbing on texture and stuff. I bet that's what they're for. Or maybe they could be for blotting your brush off to dry them in between colors. Since I did tape down my paper, I am taking the color all the way over to the edge, so I'll have a nice white border when I'm done. So after you've filled all that in, we're not going for detail now. We just want to let that dry. Now I can skip back into the center here and start putting in some washes. I'm gonna rinse that out good so that I don't end up with any surprises when I go to use it again. Okay, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush. I get asked a lot about brushes. Oh, and if you really want some brush information, I have a video coming up Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. It is all on brushes, what to use what shapes for, different techniques for different shapes, and I go over 12 different brush shapes in that video. So yeah,
that's going to be great.
I think it'll be helpful, and that way if you have any confusion over what to use, hopefully that will help. So these are synthetic, but they're meant to act like a natural hairbrush, so they hold a lot more water. This can be a little challenging for a beginner because a lot of times, especially if you're using a student grade paint, it's hard to get the colors dark enough because this is holding so much water and you're adding it to your paint and it just seems really watery and washy. So what I recommend if you're starting out is to go with a synthetic, like a typical synthetic. Is a little bit stiffer. There are ones meant for watercolor, like these Royal Majestics or Ebony Splendor for watercolor. They'll just help you get more color out of your paints and help you not get too watery on your paper, so it won't buckle as much, and you'll just have more control. But after you had, I love these brushes. I think they're fantastic. But for a beginner, you're probably going to have a more enjoyable time with a regular synthetic brush. So I just want to put that out there in case anyone's getting frustrated with the amount of water that they're getting.
People are very excited about the brush video.
Oh, good.
I'm lots of exclamation points and yays.
Oh, good. I'm going to take some sap green just on its own. And I am going to, let's make sure my eggs feel like they're dry. I'm going to hit it with a heat gun just for a second because I don't want to have my edges feathering at all.
Mandala 126. If I had to choose yellow ochre or raw sienna, which one would you recommend? Is there much of a difference?
Go with yellow ochre. I mean, if you already have a raw sienna, totally use that, but I would go with yellow ochre because yellow ochre is just pigment 42 or pigment Y43. Yeah, raw sienna is pigment Y42 or Y43 plus pigment red 188, I think. So you're getting a mix if you get raw sienna, but you're getting a pure pigment if you're getting yellow ochre. There might be some pure pigment raw siennas, and if that's the case, it's probably one of the yellow ochre pigments, but a lot of times they're mixed and they have some red in them. So you can obviously make that really easily yourself. I'm going in and I'm not wetting the paper because, again, my paint is so watery, and I am going in with my sap green. And remember, when you have your paint really watery, you're going to have a shift, way more of a shift from dry to wet than you will have, I mean, from wet to dry than you will have if you're using thicker paint or using your paint with less water in it. So you want to keep that in mind while you're working. So this is going to look a little darker than what I'm intending. And this sap green, I actually think I might have refilled my pan, and I might have used a different brand for this because this is definitely seeming a little neon to me than the, I'm going to try to get around to what was underneath, but I think I might have refilled it with a different one because I was out and I didn't have time to get my Jerry's order in. So what you can do, if you have a sap green that's too limey, take a little bit of any sort of red or any reddish brown and add that into it. See how that makes it kind of olive? That just seemed way too bright to me. There we go. This is going to give me a much more natural color. And that's what you'll notice. I mean, even if a company uses the same pigment, the color still can vary a little bit.
Olivia W., have you ever used Aurelin? A-U-R-E.
Oh, Aurelian.
Aurelian. It's the yellow I bought that I thought was a warm color, but it feels just slightly less lemony than permanent lemon.
Aurelian, yes, I have. It's I bought a tube of it, of Winsor Newton Aurelian, because I thought too I wanted a kind of lemony color, but I didn't want it to have that green or almost like green gray undertone that like a nickel lemon has. And the thing I found about it is that it kind of browns over time and with exposure to light. So you can paint with it. You may have noticed a little bit of a shift over time to more of like an ochre. It's not a huge deal, but I have kind of avoided using it because I found out about that. But you can swatch them out and tape it to a sunny window and just, I mean, this isn't a scientific study, but just tape it to your window and check on it after a month and see if there's any shift. If there's no shift and you've had it right there in a sunny window, not protected by a picture frame, your own, a frame or anything, I think you'll be able to tell whether it's going to be suit you or not. I was a little disappointed that I bought that by accident. I'm doing the burnt umber and a little bit of the red. And I'm going to add a little yellow ochre to that. Getting kind of like a rusty color.
Noah Murphy, how do I mix black? I have Payne's gray, but I need a deep black. And I've tried layering up and it hasn't worked. And I end up with gray or brown. You
need very transparent opposite colors. So like Viridian green and alizarin crimson work really well. You can use like a phthalo blue and pyrrole red will work pretty well. You just need to get really strong transparent colors, or as transparent as you can get. I want to make sure I have some good contrast with the nest and the shadow that's going to be on the table. So I am going to blot this a little bit because I feel like that might be a little too dark there. I need to have some edge to contrast on that side anyway. You might notice that you get some bloom sometimes on certain papers and then you don't on others. This is Artistico, which is 100% cotton, and the paint doesn't tend to puddle on the surface, but like other papers, sometimes the paint puddles, especially if it's a wood pulp type of paper. And in that, if you're having an issue like that and you're getting all these hard edges, you can always just kind of go over the edges with a wet brush and soften them or dampen the area you're painting first. I don't want to go and paint those little pieces right now because I'm afraid they might bloom on the background where if they touch the middle of the wash there.
Cami Daniels, question, replace Pyrrole Red with what color if you have a limited palette? Also, what is a replacement for turquoise?
You can use Cad Red Deep. You can use Naphthol Crimson. You could use Scarlet or Vermilion, any sort of like neutral to warm red. And the turquoise, you could use Phthalo Blue, super light, like with lots of water. You could even, because cobalt turquoise does tend to be semi-opaque, you could take the Phthalo Blue and add some white to it. Do it on your palette so that you're not getting chunks of white on your painting, and that will give you a very similar color and quality. You won't get the granulation. Like I got some really pretty granulation in here. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that if your monitor's full screen maybe, but I've got some pretty granulation because of the cobalt turquoise in there. So now I want to add some shadows onto my eggs. I think we're dry enough around there that I can do that. And I want to make kind of a grayish color. I'm going to use my turquoise, and I'm going to pick some of that rusty red, which was the burnt umber and pyrrole scarlet. So I'm getting this nice kind of gray color. And I do have a lot of water on my brush, so I'm going to blot it because I feel like I'm going to end up with too watery of a mix there.
Emily Murnane, I don't have a good sap-light green in my watercolor collection, but I have a bunch of blues and yellows. What are some good combinations to mix a natural-looking green?
There's a few, and I'll share a couple that I like, but you can always go to like any art supply store online like Jerry's Artorama, and you can look, when you look at pigment information for sap green, look at a couple different companies. You know, if you already have a favorite company, sap green, look and see what theirs is made out of and take those pigments and mix your own. Like Da Vinci paint uses phthalo green. I think they use phthalo blue and yellow ochre. Maybe they use phthalo green and yellow ochre. I can't remember off the top of my head, but some use, usually they'll use like a phthalo green and a warm yellow to kind of get that earthier look. So maybe they'll use permanent gamboge or cad yellow deep or something. So they get that color. So that's made that egg look a little rounder just by putting that shadow in there. Let me just look on my palette. If I'm trying to mix a sap green color, let's see, what would I do? I think I would probably use my permanent yellow, and let's add a little bit of phthalo green here and see what we get. That's a little bright. Let's try gamboge, and oh yeah, that's probably gonna be a little better. Gamboge and phthalo green work pretty good, and I think I would still probably add a touch of red in there. That was a little too much. And then when you get a mix, if you want, you can mix up like a little pot of it so that you always have it. That's getting real great because I dipped into 2 yellows, but that gives you about the idea right there. And if you decide to use like a phthalo blue, that's really strong. You're gonna need a lot of yellow with that. Oh, but that's pretty. Phthalo blue and gamboge do really well. And if it's too green, just add a little touch of red. But I've even seen combinations where they put a little violet in it. So there's, there's
nice.
Different combinations, different brands have different combinations. So I'm going back in with that same color, that rusty red and our turquoise. And I'm going to do the same to this egg. I'm going to give it a little bit of a round feeling to it. I'm applying with a brush, and then I'm going to clean my brush and soften the edges.
Reels and Roses. Hi, Lindsay. I love your product reviews. Have you ever seen the Sargent Art watercolors?
I don't think I have, but I do like Sargent Art products for beginners and children. Definitely. I've used their watercolor crayons. Like as far as like kids brand, they're very good quality. Their pastels are really good. I teach with their pastels a lot because you don't compromise the quality. I mean, potentially they could fade quicker than artist quality, but they're really nice. I actually haven't had any problem with fading either.
Dominique Designs. Does Lindsay use camel hair brushes since they need haircuts and aren't harmed in the making of brushes?
I don't, but I didn't know that, so that's good to know.
I didn't know that either.
I want to work on the background texture, so I'm drying this right now so I can get some sharp edges. Do we have any other questions?
Well, I'm scrolling down. I'm busy. Of course, then it skips all the way down. See how to practice. I'm all rusty getting staying on top of it.
The struggle is real, guys.
The struggle is very real. Kayla Ray. Hi, Lindsay. What brand kind of paper do you recommend for heavy waterwork so that it warps less?
300-pound arches would suit you quite well. There are different companies that make a 300-pound. I've only used the Arch. Oh no, I've used Winsor & Newton's Artist watercolor paper that's 300-pound. I don't know if they still make it or not, but yeah, both of those you could use a full sheet and it's not going to buckle when you paint on it pretty wet. The price is going to be twice as much as your 140-pound sheets, but if it saves you that much aggravation, you're going to spend a lot of time on it, then it's probably well worth the cost. Okay, so now I want to work on some texture in the background, and there's a big kind of like there's a big split on like the table or bench or whatever that this nest is sitting on. So I want to get that in there. I'm going to use a flat. I've got this 3/4 inch or number 20 flat, and I'm going to mix myself up a nice dark, and I'm going to start with my darkest color that I'm using, which is my burnt umber. And I want to make this color a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to add some Pyrrole Red, which is also one of my darkest colors. And I'm going to add some of the sap green to that. So I'm going to end up with a rich brown. And because sap green is a mix, it's going, this mixture actually probably has 4 colors in it. It's a really warm color here. If I want to cool it, I got to have more sap green. That's my coolest color in this mix. If I added ultramarine blue to this, it would turn almost black, but it would be a chalky black because I have opaque pigments in there. What was the question?
Steph 13. Hi, Lindsay. Where do you buy your paper? Is it expensive?
I usually get mine at Jerry's because they usually have the best price. Sometimes I'll pick them up in the craft stores if I want a pad, but if I'm buying sheets, I try to buy the biggest set that I can afford because your per sheet price drops. So when I stock up on arches, I'm buying 25 sheet packs, and it's an investment. But if I see a good deal, then I'll just bite the bullet and buy a big pack. It is also a business expense for me, so having 25 sheets is not a huge deal. But that's usually what I do. Sometimes if your big box store locally has coupons, you could probably do better, but it's harder to beat the prices, honestly, even with coupons. And you're limited to usually pads at the big box stores. They might have some sheets, but you'll pay $9 for a single sheet of watercolor paper versus, $4.
And it's too precious at $9.
It's too precious and you're not going to use it. So yeah, sometimes they offer samplers. I think Strathmore offers a sampler of their artist papers. And that way you can kind of try a bunch before deciding whether you want to buy big packs of, 10 or 25 sheets. But I find a lot of times there'll be different specials running, and if you trust the name of a paper, and I mean, nowadays you can find reviews for everything online. If you trust the name or the brand, and you're willing to take a chance, then you can get some good deals. I mean, that's a lot of times I've got great deals on paints because a company is just re-releasing a product, or they're new to the market or new to the store, and they put, their stuff on really great sale.
Dominique Designs. Update on camel hair brushes. Shelly researched and found they are in fact made of multiple animal hairs, not camel. Tricky.
Yes.
Interesting.
Can't trust nothing.
Can't trust nothing. Olivia W. I'm very used to Strathmore 400, but I'm having issues working with arches. I feel like the paint gets absorbed so quickly I can't push it around. I use it with my quill brushes that hold water.
Yeah, you'll notice a big difference between Strathmore and Arches. I think Strathmore has much more external sizing than Arches does. Arches is a fairly absorbent paper. I mean, some people say it's heavily sized, but I've had a lot of other papers that have much more sizing, and perhaps the sizing is different. So something you could do is add a little bit of gum arabic to your paint, so it kind of keeps it up on top of the surface and makes it kind of stay wetter a little bit longer. Or you can add a lifting preparation to your paper to help kind of, it almost just adds a little more sizing to it. By the way, what I'm doing here is just I took some of the I took the pyrrole red, the sap green, and some turquoise because I needed to cool down my shadows, and I'm putting in just some like mottled marks on the wooden bench here. So yeah, you might want to like add a medium to your paint, or it's probably just going to take you a little getting used to. I love Arches paper, but yeah, it is a little more absorbent. Sometimes I have to wet my paper and then wet it again, like wet it, mix my colors, wet it again, and then put my wash in because it absorbs so much.
Linda DB, how would you rank Lucas, Turner Core, Winsor Newton, Sakura Koi watercolors? Okay,
Koi would be at the bottom. They're fine. I have nothing against them, but they have no light fast information. They definitely are more of a student paint. I'd say Turner and Lucas are very similar quality, but Turner's are more transparent. Lucas just seems to have more of an opacity to me, both in their studio and their 1862 line. Did you say Winsor Newton? Was that another one?
Yes.
Winsor Newton, I love their pans. I'm not as crazy about their tubes, but they're a high quality paint. They've been around for a long time. They're trustworthy. I think they're more expensive than what they're worth. Personally, like I think for that amount of money that you pay for Winsor & Newton, you can get, they're good paints, but I think you can get more paint for your money at the same quality from other companies.
And then the Core were the other.
The Core. Oh, I really like the Core. Because like right now, since they're fairly new, they're very well priced. So that's one of those things. You take a chance on a new company and often get a really good deal. I find them to be very well priced, and you really get a value with them, especially the introductory sets, because you seem to use a lot less of the Core than other brands. I think they're more concentrated, and they use a slightly different binder. It's called Aquazol. And it seems to, it hardens, like you'd think you had dry acrylic paint on your palette because that's how hard it gets, but you put a wet brush on it and it's just instantly juicy again. And I love it. It's really fantastic paint. I bought all the intro sets, and I don't regret that at all. In fact, I almost bought another one when I saw one in the store that had the original tins, because I used to have really bigger tins for the 6 color sets. And I almost bought another set just because I saw they had that tin, but I came to my senses. Of course, I did regret it when I got home. So I went to Belfast. I was having a very frugal day, and I regretted not buying a big thing of keys at Captain Tinkham's Emporium.
Oh yeah,
huge, like mason jar of keys for $4, and I put it back. I'm like, why?
Why did I do that?
Why did I do that? Because I couldn't think of anything right on the spot what I would use it for. But then when I got home, I'm like, oh, I could have put it in a tray and dumped resin on it. It was so cool.
All sorts of things.
Why was I frugal?
Prudence Lee, when they say 300 pounds, what does it mean?
It means they take 500 sheets at 22 by 30 and they weigh it, and that's what it would weigh. So 500 sheets. So 500 sheets at 22 by 30 size, 140 pound paper would weigh 140 pounds. And if it was, 300, if it weighed 300 pounds, it'd be twice as thick, or a little more than twice as thick. They do a different measurement for European papers. They use grams per square meter, which is probably a little bit more accurate, because watercolor paper, I think, is based on 22 by 30 sheet, but they base like typing paper on a different size sheet. So it can be confusing depending if you're buying cardstock or watercolor paper, but that's what it boils down to. This is 140 pound paper I'm painting on. You can see it's buckled a little bit, but not bad enough that it's affecting what I'm doing.
Angel T, could you recommend a heat tool for both drying and embossing?
I have two. I have this Marvy. I really like this for embossing because it's really hot and it dries quick, but it's not so hot it burns my paper. But I also have the Ranger one upstairs and it's quieter. So, and it will do the trick for embossing. So either way, they both seem to last pretty well. You have a Ranger one, don't you?
Yeah, and the one I've had for, because I use it just for pretty much embossing. Although when I do some stamping, watercolor stamping, I have used it in the past, but I use mine mostly for embossing, and I've had that a long time.
Yeah, and I have replaced my Marby one once. I had an older one, the green one, and I did replace it because it eventually burnt out. But I'd had that for several years, and this one I've had for quite a few years. So either way, I bought a backup at Harbor Freight, but that puppy gets so hot that I'm afraid to I'm afraid to use it. And when you're done, you have to leave it somewhere. I burnt my table, and underneath the table felt hot.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
I don't want to use this. I'm afraid I'll catch a house on fire.
Yeah, I set it down and forget, and it melts.
Yes. Yeah. So I was kind of freaked out by that.
That's no good.
So I don't go for the heavy duty industrial ones for that reason.
Yeah. K Burns. Hi, Lindsay. Are pastels water soluble?
Chalk pastels are like your decorator's chalk or just your chalk sticks. But oil pastels aren't unless you have special water soluble pastels. All right, so that's secondary wash here is going to have to dry before I put on any more, before I put on the dry brushing texture. I have done some dry brushing here just because I've been, dragging my brush and letting it kind of leave me some streaky bits. But I am going to be doing more on top after this all dries. And now our nest is dry enough that I can start to pick around in there with a smaller brush. And I'm going to start around my focal point, which is the eggs. And I'm going in with a smaller brush. This is a number 6 round. You can use whatever size between a 3 and a 6 that you're comfortable with. And I'm going to mix up some dark brown. Since I'm in the kind of green grassy area, I'm going to start off with my sap green. Add some pyrrole red to it.
Tumster Mom. How are watercolor sheets shipped? I wouldn't want them folded.
Oh, they ship them flat in a cardboard flat file usually, and you can actually save it. They come in a bag usually, and then and all your sheets are in a bag within it's like a flat box, basically cardboard box. And I usually just keep mine right in there inside the bag they come in, and pull out a sheet at a time as I need it. And they usually, a lot of times online stores will require you order 10 sheets, but you can assort them. And what I do is when I'm ready to paint with them, I'll go, because I have a big flat file under my bed upstairs, because I don't want to store all my papers down here where I have, where I'm in a basement and, who knows, it could flood or something. So then I just go and I take out what I need, take a few sheets out, tear them down to quarter size and put them in folders and keep them handy there. So I'm using some of my sap green, the turquoise, and I'm adding that into that mix of brown that I made with the burnt umber, the red, pyrrole red, and the sap green. So I've kind of got some just greeny brown colors, and I'm just basically painting around the blades of grass, which probably sounds very tedious, but it's not too bad.
It doesn't have to be perfect because it's nature.
Exactly. It's negative painting, really. We're painting around the subject. So I'm painting the shadows in around the blades of grass. Now you could go in and painstakingly put masking fluid in, but yeah, my thoughts exactly. But I also think it would look less natural because you would have all those, once you remove the masking fluid, you're going to have all those kind of fussy, hard lines. Because you usually don't use your best brushes to apply masking fluid with, because it can ruin your brushes. So,
Terry Woods, what is your favorite sap green?
I like the Turner sap green. It's very bright and clean looking. I love the M. Graham sap green. That's a little earthier. They also have a really nice Hooker's green. The core sap green is also very, very bright and clean, like the Turner. I like a little bit earthier of a sap green, but not chalky. Marry Me Blue has a decent sap green. You know what? Most sap greens are pretty good. Winsor Newton makes a good sap green.
Bev Roberts, Lindsay, are you and Marty going to do an Ask the Artist collaboration? I would love that.
Oh, Marty Owens. Oh, that would be fun. We did one with like Steve from Mind of Watercolor and Lisa from Lacquery Fine Art last year. It's on my channel in the archives. If you're interested in that. That would be kind of fun. I don't plan on any collaborations until the new year because
till after Christmas.
After Christmas, it's such a busy time of year, business-wise and personal-wise. So,
Jane Burrell, what paints do I use to make a coral?
I would use, well, you might use some of your reds just with water might be corally enough. I would probably use a cool yellow like lemon and a cool red. That will give you more of your peachy corals as opposed to orange. If you use a warm red and a warm yellow, you're going to get a bright orange. But if you use a cooler red like a rose and use a lemony yellow, then you're going to get more of the peach or coral tones because it just kind of knocks the chroma down.
Daphne Campbell Jeanette, would you recommend taking lesser quality supplies on the road?
I do, because I'm not afraid to lose them. And I'll go in situations where I might be afraid to take my higher quality stuff because I'm afraid I drop it or fall out of the canoe with it. So I definitely take cheaper stuff. I take my koi set when I am canoeing or traveling, or one of my Cotman sets because I know I'm not out that much money if I lose it in the drink or whatever.
Bev Roberts, can you use acrylic mediums like iridescent or pearlescent mediums with watercolors?
You can, but then your watercolor paints will not be liftable. And if you're entering into a competition, if it's a strict watercolor competition, it won't be eligible. I'm using burnt umber on its own, but I am just putting it in the same little well where I had my mix because I'm going from a mix of burnt umber with the green colors and I'm going to go out to where I have warmer shadows. So I'm just switching up my my color a little bit, and I can mix it in just so I have a kind of a transition dark. And it's pretty much just kind of dashy strokes that are going kind of in a circular pattern. I do have some branches that are a little wild here that I want to preserve, but they pretty much all are going to go in that circular direction.
Katie Lynn, what's a good tip for beginner watercolor?
Paint, practice.
Do it. Yep. Do it. Or stamp. Practice watercoloring with stamping.
Oh, that's
a good tip. Small image to practice on. That's what I do.
That's a great tip.
I feel more comfortable practicing my watercolor skills with a stamp because then nobody has to see it if I make a real mess of it. Especially when I'm mixing colors. Sometimes that goes really off the rails.
And if it's beautiful, put it on a card front and mail it away.
Right. Speaking of which, have you started Christmas cards yet?
I have actually.
Oh, I haven't.
Because I've been doing tutorials on. I'll do a tutorial on it. So I've been pretty good. I probably got because I haven't made that many of any one design yet. So I probably only have about maybe 15 done, but that's a start. I haven't done any mass producing.
I'm working up to it.
Yeah. How many do you have done?
None.
Slow start.
Okay, well, my excuse is I went to a Stampin' Up party and they had on sale, they had the set Christmas stocking, stamp, and die set.
Yeah.
So I've been die cutting out Christmas stockings with like some scrap Christmas paper and
yeah.
adding on like the cuffs and the fur and stuff like that. So that's my excuse is I'm getting some Christmas stockings all
Well, there, you've started then.
I just don't have any put together yet. That's my excuse.
Well, you save time if you assembly line anyway.
Let's see. Tumster Mom, doing the negative painting on the nest with the brown, are you just making it up as you go along?
Pretty much. I am looking at my reference photo, but I am pretty much just getting in those little dark shapes that I see.
Because remember, it's nature, so it doesn't have to be perfect.
And nobody's going to look at this picture when they're looking at your painting either.
Oh, well, I will, but so don't show me your painting. I'm just kidding.
She's judging you. She's judging you all.
Judging McJudgerson over here.
I remember when I first got into stamping, and it was a Christmas card situation, and I thought, oh, the money I'm going to save on buying Christmas cards.
No, that's nice.
It was a nice thought. I don't think it turned out to be that way. But it's kind of like a moment of zen when you're making Christmas cards in the midst of, all the excitement of a holiday season, or, stress of getting ready for the holidays.
Yes.
You can take that time to enjoy crafting and feeling productive and not feeling like you're, not doing anything. Oh, I got into some crazy color there. Ooh. I think what I did was I got into a little dab of the pyrrole red, but that's all right. I'm going to go with it. Actually, it's kind of an exciting color there. I have less shadows on the outside because you don't have the deep depths of the egg area.
Abigail Van der Plugem. Can I use the background paint in this painting to paint a violin that way?
Oh, for the wood tone? I don't see why not. Yeah,
see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. You might even want to mask off, since that does have kind of complicated edges, you might want to mask off the border of the violin so that you don't have to fuss so much. I took some of that brown with the red that I got by mistake, and I'm putting some of that around the eggs because I think it's going to make the green grasses really pop. So I am adding some of that there. Yeah, use that wood grain technique anytime you want any old weathered wood. And if you decide that it's too weathered on a violin, it doesn't look varnished enough, you can glaze over with like a flat brush. Use a brush like this and a kind of like a texture of like 2% milk, burnt sienna, and glaze over with that, and that will smooth out and still keep your wood grain but not make it look so weathered and dried out. Like this wood should look a little weathered and dried out when we're done. A little pyrrole red and your brown mix here, just giving a little pop to some of these green strands. When you want a lot of detail, a lot of control, hold your brush at a 90-degree angle, and you're going to get a better point, and you're going to be able to control your brush strokes a lot better.
Crystal Monroe. Can Spectrum Aqua be used as a regular marker or just watercolor? I accidentally bought them and I don't know how to watercolor.
Yeah, you can use them as a regular marker. I like to color my stamps because there's two ends. I like to color the rubber of my stamps with them and just stamp with them like an ink pad. They work really well for that. And the fine tip is great for journaling if you scrapbook, or adding accents onto even a watercolor painting if you wanted to. I am going to get some sap green. I want to do, there's some like mossy, like bits of moss on this this nest, and I'm just tapping it in with straight sap green at the moment because I can always make it duller, but I can't make it brighter. So I want to get that moss in there. Don't do it too watery because you might want to retain some of those brush strokes. Tap tap, little brush strokes in there. And I think I saw a little over here. All right, so now we can start painting some of the positive areas. And for the green grasses, we're actually going to use yellow ochre and sap green because we want it. Yellow ochre is a naturally opaque color. So by mixing them together, we're going to have a color that's going to rise to the top and even cover up some shadows in areas, so it will be the forefront color. We're not going to end up with, we're going to be able to paint strands this way. You can do more yellow ochre if you need it lighter. And I'm still using that number 6 round, but if you're feeling like you can't get fine enough lines, you can go to a liner. When you're using a liner, I'm going to show you because I have one handy. Just it is right here. When you're using a liner, since you have longer bristles, you do need to have your paint a little more watery because, like, see, it doesn't really want to, if I try to paint like this, I don't know if it's going to, it will let you make short strokes, but I'm getting a lot of like broken lines there. So if you're using a liner, you do need to have more water. Your paint needs to be more of like a skim milk consistency, or it's just not, it's not going to allow the paint to come off your brush, but you will get those really beautiful fine lines. Like if I wanted to do a grass coming up over the egg, like I have here, I can do that really easily with that liner. It just gives you a beautiful fine line. And you don't have to reload your brush very often because those long bristles let you hold a lot more paint and water, but you do have to have that skim milk consistency.
We've had a couple questions about whether you're going to be doing painting Christmas ornaments again this year. I know that doesn't have to do with the watercolor, but we've had a couple different people.
I would like to, if I can think of something good to do, then I will. I want to find, because sometimes if you get a shaped ornament, not everybody can find them. So I want to find something, either something that we can make from scratch so that anybody can do it, or something that's so easy to find that anybody can do it. So I will keep my eyes open and see if I can find something like that. Maybe like we could paint on a glass Christmas ball or something, so it's something that everybody can get. That's my only concern there, is I don't want to do something that I got this ornament, 5 years ago at a craft store, and this is discontinued, and sorry guys, nobody else can do this, but watch me have a great time, Sorry about your luck. I'm just doing yellow ochre on its own, and I did switch to a bigger brush because I went back to that number 6 because I do have more thicker grasses out here, more stockier. I'll put a little red in there.
Lindsay T, if you could only buy one size of the Mimic brushes, which size would you get?
I probably would get, I'm going to show you my favorite one. It's right here. Number 12 round squirrel. That's because it comes to such a sharp point. It holds a lot of water though. So if you are a beginner and you're not used to having a really juicy brush, this may be a little unwieldy, but this is my favorite. The number 12 round and the squirrel. They're just a little pointier than the faux Klinsky ones. They have a little less snap. These are stiffer. Those are a little softer. So it's your preference, but I like the number 12 squirrel the best as far as being able to paint an entire painting with one brush. That's got my vote.
Candy Westphal, I'm pretty new at this as I am more of a colorist. What's your opinion on watercolor pencils and pens?
Honestly, I would go for a pencil over a pen because you don't have to worry about it drying out. You get a lot more for your money, and you can get light fast watercolor pencils. The new Spectrum Aquas are supposedly light fast according to the manufacturer. Albright Jour by Faber-Castell is light fast. They're fantastic. They're like I have quite a few brands. I like a lot of different brands, but the nice thing about them is that they're light fast, they're super bright, but they have 120 colors in their line, and it pretty much covers the entire gamut of like what a Derwent watercolor and Derwent Intense line would cover. So it's just that they're a wonderful, versatile brand. They're much more expensive than the Spectrum Aquas, but they do have also a kind of a little bit longer history of being light fast, when the Spectrum Aquas are new, and you can buy the Albright Jour's open stock if you want to just buy like 3 or 4 and see what you think before you invest, which is nice. So I'm just mixing some different grays. I like that turquoise because it is opaque and I can layer stuff on top, and my lines will kind of show up on top if I had any shadows that I wanted to cover up.
You should put some berries in the grass.
I was thinking that some little holly berry. But then I was like, oh, maybe that's too cheesy.
No, I say put some
red berries. That's a great idea.
Little orange berries, like fall berries.
Oh, I like that idea.
Spring berries. Doesn't have to be red berries.
Well, I have red,
so just screaming some berries need to be, because that's what they do. They gather up.
I like that idea. I think I'll do that.
I'm saying do it.
I like it. Should we splatter? Is Rich around?
Rich is here, and I think he said something about splattering. I think he said that.
Oh, did he? He wanted something.
I think he actually suggested.
Boy, he's getting really open-minded.
He's really loosening up in his old age. Noah Murphy, have you used Van Gogh Artist watercolor? Any issues with your lighter colors like the yellows cracking as they dry and the white taking a week to completely dry?
I don't have the white. I bought a few colors, open stock. I didn't have any. I only squirted out little bits on a plate, and they dried, and I didn't have any problems with cracking. But I only put like a little pea-sized amount out, so I don't know about larger amounts. They are student grade paint, so sometimes that happens. But honestly, as far as student grade paints go, they are a fantastic paint, and I know a lot. And actually, I think some websites even classify them as artist grade. I think as far as bang for your buck, you do really well with that line of paints. I think them, Grumbacher Academy, and Cotman are excellent for student grade. But no, I didn't have any issues cracking, but I only squirted out a tiny little bit. Try spritzing them with water. If you need, you could add a drop of glycerin in there just to keep the moisture in. It's best if you can stir it in while it's wet, but if you can't because it's already dried, then you could just kind of spritz it and then add a drop in there, and that should help retain the moisture. Okay, I'm gonna let the nest part set for a bit, and I'm gonna go back to the eggs, and I'm gonna put some speckles on there, but I'm not gonna spatter it. I'm actually gonna dab it deliberately. And I want kind of a warm brown, so I've got this mixture here that's definitely got a little red in it. So we got the burnt umber, the scarlet, or I mean the pyrrole red. Pyrrole red is super strong, so you gotta be careful with that. But I'm not like keeping any colors out of it. If there's any green in there, that's fine. And I'm just gonna tap on the speckles. I might end up doing kind of a grayish wash over the nest. I'm thinking it might be a little bit too colorful, but we'll mix our own gray. Sometimes I like to jump around because honestly, the best thing you can do is let a painting sit a bit before you make any big decisions. And then as I'm working on the egg, I can see some other shadows that, some adjustments that I want to make. I'm going to grab a little bit of the turquoise. I'm kind of wishing at this point that I had used ultramarine blue in this painting because it's difficult to get a really cool dark of the colors I'm using, but I don't want to introduce a color this stage in the game because it's gonna throw everything else off. So if I was going to paint this again, I would have added ultramarine blue to my mix, and maybe even in lieu of the turquoise. I'm not sure, but that's all right. I am using this turquoise to kind of cool down my brown, and it's still dark enough. Or maybe instead of the turquoise, I would use a phthalo blue, which is just a much more intense color, and I would have been able to get deeper darks with it. Use like a phthalo blue or Prussian blue. Because a painting is really, it's more important to have your values right than your colors. And your values is how light or dark something is. So like if you look at a black and white photograph, you still can see what's going on if the composition's good and the values are good. As I progress into the painting, my brush is getting drier. So I'm putting on thicker paint. I am not putting on, like, I'm not painting as large of an area. I'm getting more refined. So I start kind of with big washy areas, and I get smaller brush. I work in smaller brushes and work much drier as I progress. I might not need to do the gray wash. I'm not sure now that as I'm working here.
I kind of like the vibrancy of it.
I just got to make sure this area over here that I've got enough. I think I might just need to darken the table a little bit more, but we haven't gone back to do our final details on the table anyway. And over here where I have a lighter table in the background, I can be really dark with my branches that are kind of woven in here on the outside of the nest. You have any questions?
Nothing specific right now. Oh, Rhonda McGee. Lindsay, are you as great a cook?
She can't even ask me the question with a straight face.
She's not a terrible cook, people. She has things she can cook.
Bread. I can make bread.
Oh, yes, you can make bread. And chili. You made you made the vegan chili there a while back, and that was excellent.
Thank you.
Then you tried to get me to put the vegan cheese on it. I was having none of it.
Yeah, I'm not a good cook.
Okay.
I don't enjoy cooking.
That's part. You have to kind of like it.
Yeah.
Like anything else. If you don't kind of like it. I like cooking, and I always have, so.
I think part of it is I hate wasting food, and I've had so many just bad experiments.
Right.
That, I hate the thought of wasting it. And for some reason, I have no fear of our wasting art supplies, but I don't know, food, it's like there's starving people,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was lucky too, because when I was younger, I started learning how to cook. So, and I had help, like mom would help me.
Yeah.
And dad would help me learn. So when I was younger, I learned a lot of the basics, and then they still actually taught home ec when I was in junior high. So I always had some basics when I was younger. And then, I'm not afraid to try a new recipe and experiment. 'Cause I'm like, well, if it goes bad, it goes bad. But thankfully, John's pretty much a garbage disposal, so there isn't much you won't eat.
Well, I'm older than you, so there was home ec in high school when I went there, and I think I gave my poor teacher a stroke. She was so frustrated with me. My mom's a good cook, which is the ironic thing.
Right. Yeah, but she works so much, she probably didn't have time to really teach you a lot of the basics, right?
Yeah, and I think I've stressed her out in the kitchen.
She's a control freak in the kitchen.
And of course, I was vegetarian at a young age, so it was I was always trying different things, and not successfully a lot of the time. I'm pulling off some little branches and grasses into this area where I know it's going to stay out of focus. I'm going to be adding most of the texture to the bottom of the picture, so that's all right. I also want to drag some yellow ochre because it's a lighter color. And if you get to the point where you're working on this and you cannot get the contrast with the yellow ochre, you can add a little white to it. Or you can scrape away or lift away to the white, but it's difficult to lift to really fine lines of white. So if you want to add white or use a gel pen or something to get that texture, it's your painting. You do what you want to do. That's totally fine. Just again, it would disqualify it from a watercolor competition. But so like you'd probably be putting something you saw in a tutorial in a watercolor competition. So I'd really just not stress it and do whatever makes sense for your painting. Like there's some pretty white speckles on the branches here. I mean, you could do that with a white gel pen or a white white gouache or something. I think that would be lovely.
Joy P. Hi, Lindsay. Can you recommend a good online color theory course?
Yes, it was a good one. I linked to it at Craftsy. I have a link to Craftsy in the video description. If you click that, that'll take you out. But you know what? I got to tell you, there's a huge sale coming up next weekend. So why don't you? Okay, I'm going to tell you about it, but you might want to wait till next weekend because all the classes are going to be on a super duper sale. But and I'll post about it next weekend. But it's called Luminous Color Mixing, and it uses a split primary color system like I use here, and it's fantastic. So for I'm going to switch to a hog fan brush. Use any sort of stiff, or you can use a stiff hog flat. Any sort of like old damaged brush is going to work great for this. You want it to be kind of stiff, so it's not your typical watercolor brush, but we're going to use this to do some texture. And when you're using this, well, actually, when you're using a hog brush, you don't have to have your paint as dry as you would if you were trying to do this with a regular watercolor brush. But we're just going to streak. It needs to be wetter, actually. I'm going to streak in some color here. I'm going to get that crack in the boards. And you can even kind of wiggle it if you want to get some wood grain texture. I don't want too much detail up here. I want that to be fairly soft. So you can, hopefully my arm's not in the way. I can't tell. Let's see. Is that off? Kind of, you can wiggle it and get that wood grain texture in there, or just streak it. So you can also just like kind of play with this on a scrap piece of paper if you're not sure how much water you need. Too much water, you're going to have it all clumping together, all your bristles clumping together. And I do talk about this in the brush video on Sunday that's coming up. You just kind of have to play with it to figure out how much moisture you need in there. Now I do want a little bit more of a shadow over here. I am going to try just using the burnt umber on its own, and hopefully that's going to be dark enough.
Vidi Cigar Chetiar, apologize, I probably butchered that name. Are watercolors and poster colors the same quality?
No, usually poster colors are like a tempera. They're usually use less quality pigments, and they have a lot of white in them because they're an opaque, kind of like gouache, but they're usually not as thick as gouache, and they're generally used for like temporary works of art, such as posters or, you know, kids' crafts. But they're essentially like similar in the fact that they're not, you know, you could do a watercolor with them. They would lift up if you added water to it after it was dry. It would still lift. So they do have that similarity. They're kind of related. They're like a tempera or a gouache. I'm just dragging out that shadow a little bit because it was a little too bold.
Love it.
Thanks.
Loving this.
I'm going to dab some yellow ochre on top of that moss. I think that moss is looking a little too bright. Oh yeah, sometimes I look back up in the monitor and I can tell how it looks a little bit better. I get a little confused just kind of looking at it. I'm going to go with a shorter brush because I don't want to have too much water in there. This is another cool shape. It's called a cat's tongue. It's like an oval wash, but it comes to a little more of a point. This one's by Princeton. It's not the Neptune though. It's a stiffer synthetic. It says number 4050 CT. You can get this at Jerry's. I know because I bought mine at Jerry's a couple of years ago. And I'm going to grab a little yellow ochre. I think I'll just grab it on its own and just kind of tap that into some of the mossy areas.
Joe Maskey. Love the calligraphic nest strokes.
Oh, thank you.
He's been very quiet. He and Rich both have been, actually.
What's going on?
I don't know.
I bet Joe wants a splatter.
All of the splatter.
There. That gives it a little more complex of a look. I like the berry idea. I think maybe I'll put a couple little branches with some berries on it. I like that.
Oh, Rich he's too busy being a good boy. Whatever that means.
I don't know. I'm going to put this little branch in here and throw a couple berries on that. And then if we like the look of that, I'll do another one in. I think I'm going to do a very fancy technique here. I'm going to use my finger to make the berries.
This is fancy.
Hopefully it's not a terrible mistake.
I doubt it will be a terrible mistake.
I think it's all right.
Oh yeah, did the spin doctor figure out his glue mystery? When last time he got that box of glue?
Oh yeah.
Did he ever figure that out?
I don't know.
Answer us, spin doctor. Someone, Charity D asked him. I'm like, I forgot about that.
The weird glue stalker.
Nope, still a mystery. Weird. Terry Woods. Has Jerry's or Cheap Joe's done amazing Black Friday sales in the past? So far, not finding their pre-Black Friday sales to be unresistible.
Their prices are pretty good all the time, so I haven't noticed knock my socks off on Black Friday. Another one in there, I think. I'll let that dry and then I'll put some shadows and highlights on them.
Yeah, those I like those berries. I think that was a nice little touch.
I think I need some more though if I'm going to do that. I think maybe I'll put some berries on and then add the branches because, yeah, maybe. Oh, finger works so much better for that. And since it's a fairly opaque pigment, I can just dab it right on top.
Mm.
Oh, I like, great idea, Sarah. That's really fun. And next to the sap green, it gives it like kind of a Christmassy look.
It's like Christmassy, but not, you could leave it up year round.
It's not overtly Christmassy. Yeah. It's secular Christmassy or non-secular. I don't know which is
Christmassy.
I don't know what it is. It's seasonal. Because fall, you got fall berries. It's Festivus. For the rest of us. All right, maybe just one more there because I don't want to leave an even number.
Oh, Joe says that Jerry's is big on free gifts with big holiday orders. He's gotten free bags, brush cases, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's always good too, because a present for you, present for somebody else.
That's right. One for you, one for me.
Oh, somebody can't. Grace Blosser says, didn't know I was your niece.
Oh.
We look nothing alike.
That makes sense. It would be weird if we did look alike.
Yeah, that would be a little creepy.
Some little branches in here for these guys. Actually, I think maybe it's easy to put the branches in first because it's kind of weird putting them in now, but I think that's all right. They have to dry and I have to put some highlights on them. I think what I'm going to do now is blast this with the heat tool and then use a white gel pen for some highlights. I think that'll be
gel pen.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, just go ahead while I'm drying. This will take me a minute or two to dry.
We had a few questions, but the mods are getting the questions. So.
Oh, wonderful.
They're still discussing I'm your niece.
Oh.
What gel pen do you use? Dominique Designs.
Uniball Signo. It's the only one that I found that does not clog and gives me a nice opaque finish.
I agree. Yep.
Well, the red is really shifting when it dries. It's getting a lot darker.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the heat or just the how thick I used it, or
I'm gonna go with thick. Because you were just kind of dabbing your finger in the paint, and then. But I think it looks nice with the green.
Thanks. Okay, let's go in with a gel pen. You do have to make sure that if you're using a gel pen, you let it dry really well, because it will smear. And not everything is completely dry, but it's dry enough for me I can kind of work around on some of these anyway. I am going to, there's no real strong light source here, so I'm going to have to, well, we definitely have a light source coming in here because we have a shadow under the nest there. So I'm going to put more highlights on the kind of upper right-hand side. We could actually have the highlight on the right side and just a little sparkle on the left. And it can help you refine any weird shapes you have too. And you can glaze over a gel pen. Once it's dry, you can glaze over it with watercolor. Hopefully my hand's not in the way there. These are really great if you stamp or do any other crafting too, because they'll write on dark if you're doing a card with like a dark.
Yeah. And they don't die halfway through. If these other brands that just kind of stop working halfway through when you're writing something or doing some detail work, and it's
I'm putting the speckles on that branch too that I mentioned, because I thought that that's really kind of cool looking. You can see that in the photograph, the reference photo. And the reason I can show this on my blog, and I can't show the ones from Paint My Photo on my blog, is just because the usage agreement. These are from this one's from Graphic Stock, so I can show it on my blog.
Yogi Forever, where do you get inspiration?
Well, I like to paint outside when the weather's good, from nature. So that's a good source of inspiration. Sometimes I'm inspired by seeing like people use a different medium. A lot of times I'll switch to a different medium and do something different, like jewelry, or a different type of painting, like oil painting, just to kind of break me out of a rut. So I'm always making something. If I feel like I'm just getting stuck, then I'll just switch to a different medium.
Valerie Connell, she is going to be posting a gourd video this weekend, part 1 of 2. She's going to be wood burning on it.
Oh, fun. I have a whole box of gourds. I want to watch her tutorial. Ooh, because I don't know what to do with them. I do have a wood burner too, so that would be handy to know. I thought it'd be so cool to like use like alcohol inks on a gourd that you've wood burned or something like that. Something transparent so you can really see the texture of the gourd. 'Cause the ones I have like kind of a mottled texture to them. And I just think it would be really pretty, but I've never sawn it, because I thought it'd be cool to saw it so you can make a birdhouse out of it, because they're birdhouse gourds. But then I also heard that the stuff, the dust or the pulp or whatever that's dried in the center is hazardous to breathe in. So then I was like, well, I don't know if I want to attempt that. It just seemed really arduous when I'd hear people talk about it. Now I might glaze over some of these white lines, so don't freak out if it seems like I'm putting way too much in there. It's kind of like the icing on a cupcake or the sprinkle on a cupcake, because it's just those high details that kind of sparkle. Trying not to set my arm in any paint, because even though I dried it, I'm still getting paint all over my wrist. Maybe it's on the tape. I do like the white gel pen. I'd resisted for a long time, and then I went over to the dark side, and boy, it feels good.
Doesn't it?
It does.
It does. Cheyenne, what watercolors would you recommend for beginners?
These are really good if you can swing it there, but they're not the set of 18 that I have here. I don't have all 18 colors because I don't have put the white and the black out, but that's anywhere between, I've seen it on sale for as low as $19, but they're usually like $24 or $29 for the set at Jerry's. There's a link to my class list of what I use on these Friday tutorials in the video description. That's a great set. If you live in the United States and you can get it from Jerry's, it's like $150. If you live elsewhere and you can't buy it from Jerry's, that's like the list on it, but it's a fantastic value. If that is too prohibitive, or if you live in another country where you can't shop at Jerry's, Van Gogh is a good student set that's affordable. Grumbacher and Cotman, they're all very similar in quality. You're not wasting your money getting them. You're getting your money's worth, absolutely. If you do live in America and you can get these Turner paints, which are Japanese, ironically, you think you'd be able to get them at a good price, elsewhere too, but they're a great value for transparent watercolor. If you want something more opaque, then Lucas is a little bit more opaque. It's German made. It's also very pigmented. And the Lucas Studio is actually really good quality student grade paint. The Lucas 1862 is quite a bit more expensive, but the Studio has excellent quality for what you pay. All right, I think I want to do a little yellow ochre on top of those, but I'm gonna let that dry. And I think I'm gonna go right now, though, I'm gonna go with a small round brush. This is called a spotter. It doesn't put out very much paint, and that's what I want. I want to do some shadows on those berries. I am gonna do, I think I'm gonna just mix some green with the red I've already used, just some of the sap green, because that's an opposite, and it will give me a nice natural dark. I think the turquoise is just a little too, I did mix the turquoise and the pyrrole red there. I got a beautiful granulating purple. Actually, you know what though? That might be all right, because that might make it a little too brown. I don't know. Do you think berries would have more of a brown? Like, of course, the berries, as they're starting to shrivel up and die, they do get that kind of brown.
Yeah, but
I think I'd like
this could be a spring nest where the berries are starting to come out. And there are some berries that do last through the winter.
Yeah. So I'm going to try that. Try that with a turquoise. As long as it doesn't look too gray. That might be. Yeah, I think that's all right. And since this doesn't hold a lot of paint, I am going to have to reload a little more often. But I'm going to go put the shadow on the opposite side of the main highlight. I was checking for a bead to make sure I didn't have any beads of.
Sunflower Bermuda. What does transparency C mean? C is in quotation, like the letter C.
Transparency C?
So what do you mean, Sunflower Bermuda?
I haven't seen that. I've seen series can be ABC or 1, 2, 3, 4.
Maybe that's what she means, series C.
Transparency, usually they're rated by their transparent or their semi-transparent or they're opaque in watercolor. And it's usually signified by like a box, like a square, and it will be either all colored in black or it'll be half colored black and white, or it'll be all white. And there's always a key on the brochure that you're looking at to tell you what each symbol means, because sometimes it'll be a circle. I think Daniel Smith might have a circle. Winsor Newton has a square. I think somebody might have a triangle. But there's always a key on the pamphlet to say what it signifies.
Yogi Forever, do you ever sell your paintings?
Yeah, quite a bit. I had 4 people ask me to buy last time, the live stream we did with the
nice
sunset. First come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have a booth at a local antiques mall that I put my stuff into, because otherwise I'd be overridden by paintings. I don't feel very much sentimental attachment after I'm done a painting.
There, it's done.
It's done. It's like movies. Once I watch a movie, it's very unlikely I'm going to watch it again.
I'm the same way. I have my certain movies I do like to watch. You know, Mean Girls.
Oh, I've never seen that.
Really?
I never have.
It's great. It's great.
Is that Tina Fey?
Huh?
Is that Tina Fey?
Tina Fey is in it. She wrote it, and I think she might have even been the producer, but it's got Lindsay Lohan before Lindsay Lohan got crazy.
Yeah.
And it's got, what's her, but you know, it's about high school girls, Mean Girls. It's very funny.
Is it appropriate for like My Girls, or?
I think so. Yeah. I think they could handle it. There's no like real nudity or cursing or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there is some, you know, obviously like bullying and making fun of people, but it's about high school girls, so it's appropriate. Well, if you ever want to watch it first, I have it.
Okay.
Because it's one of the movies I watch. I like if I'm on a girl movie day and John's not home, I'll throw that in.
I'm just doing some little yellow ochre in this gel pen area just to kind of soften that. I don't want all my highlights to be the same level of whiteness. You can actually get it's like a paint. It's almost like a whiteout for watercolor. If like you do make a mistake and you don't want to use white, you want to kind of, it's like a liquid paper, an actual like watercolor paper that you can paint back on if you do end up kind of messing an area up. You can do that with watercolor ground from Daniel Smith. That's kind of a fun way to rescue a painting if you've, you know, really botched an area and you want to start from scratch again. I don't know if that one's good for doing fine details, but it's good for like completely wiping out an area. I think I might, well, I'm considering whether I want to put a little bit of a yellow ochre wash on the eggs, but I don't know. I already have a wash over it and I've already painted the speckles, so probably not. I'm thinking this is probably about done.
Sunflower Bermuda expanded on her question.
Sure.
It's a tube of Turner Artist Watercolor Chrome Oxide Green and says PG 17 for the pigment, 3 stars for light fastness, and transparency says C.
That must be like little transparency. Chrome Oxide Green's a very opaque color. In fact, it's my least favorite color in the entire world.
Really?
Yeah, it is. And I don't mean anything against you having that color at all. It's just personally, I find that color difficult to use because it's so opaque. But if you were going to use it to like layer on top, it is excellent for that because it is extremely opaque. And I think it was Rich told me if you mix it with a green gold, it actually mixes really to make some really beautiful colors. But that's one that just stays hidden in my drawer. I don't even put it in my palette anymore. It makes me so, I don't know what it is. I think maybe because I got off on the wrong foot with that color. So now whenever I look at it.
Oh, it brings back bad memories.
But then again, you'll see somebody that will be their favorite color. And so it's so personal preference.
Yogi Forever, what is the name of the shop you sell your paintings at?
The Schoolhouse Antiques Mall in Brewer, Maine. It's funny, every once in a while, somebody will, from YouTube will say they've been in there and they bought some stuff. It's like, whoa, hope you didn't have to drive very far. It's not like Brewer, Maine is close to anything.
Well, close to us.
That's about it. I'm going to see what I get if I mix some sap green with the turquoise. I think I might want to just do just another few. By the way, liner brush is not the best brush to mix your paint. I probably shouldn't be doing that. It's not great for the bristles.
Well, you're not leaving your brushes in the water, so
whoops. Yeah, I'm not.
No.
That's why the brush, there's no brush water cam. That's out of the shot. That's something you might want to consider if you do have a tendency to leave your brushes in the water, to get acrylic handled brushes like this one here. It's like a plastic, so you get if you leave it, then the handles don't swell and chip. Of course, it's not the best idea for your brushes to leave them standing in a bucket of water tip down, but nobody's perfect.
I am. No, I'm sorry. I'm a little tired. I didn't get much sleep last night, so I'm a little hazy and delirious.
She likes to point out my brush indiscretions.
No, I wasn't pointing them out. I was saying you didn't. You didn't have brushes.
But actually, I did.
It's helping. See, you just sold yourself out. I was covering for you, and you just threw yourself under the bus.
I did. Well, I got to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a terrible liar too. So.
Well, I'm not Martha Stewart, so.
I don't want to be Martha Stewart. Although I do like looking at her product line. She does have some great products. She does have some
nice things.
Say what you will about her.
Yep. She's paved some ways,
yeah.
So you know. That was that next one I did.
And she does a lot of collaborations with Snoop Doggy Dogg now. So
does she?
Oh yeah, he's like he goes on her show, I guess, regularly. They've done like other TV shows together. Like he goes on and does crafts and stuff.
I have not caught a Martha Stewart show in years.
Well, I haven't either, but I was on Pinterest and there was like this top 10 moments from Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg. You know, it had like little clips or videos. I was like, my goodness, they do a lot of things together.
Huh? Who'd have thought? What do you think? Do you think it's done?
I think it's done. I think if you keep messing with it, you're going to go over.
Probably. I get asked a lot about, and if you do have any more questions, go ahead and type them in now. I do get asked a lot about tape tearing paper. So I'm going to show you how I remove the, let me dry it first, because it's always good idea to dry this. But I'm going to show you how I take the tape off so that I don't rip my paper. And if any questions come in while I'm drying, just tell me. It's just mostly important that I get the paper around the tape dry. Of course, I don't want any of that paint to run in the center.
Michael and Fitzgerald, any chance for a live oil painting?
Sure, I did a live oil painting a couple weeks ago, the macaroons, but I wouldn't be opposed. I like all kinds of mediums. I'm going to just put a little bit. I noticed I could use a little bit more of a shadow there. Just going to do the, I'm just going to mix up a neutral using colors I've already used, because they've all the colors have been everywhere on this painting. I don't really have to worry too much. but I do want it really light. Oh, when I get asked about cleaning my palette, I'm going to show that too at the end because I do get it pretty messy, and sometimes I get my paints with a little film of color on them that shouldn't be there. So I do want to show you how I deal with that so I don't end up contaminating my pans in the future. So I'm using that spotter again because I just wanted to put a tiny little shadow in there to kind of pull the eggs apart, and I didn't want to have too much color, so that's why I'm using this little spotter, not like trying to side load. There's no point in trying to get in there. And if I side loaded, I would end up wetting those speckles and probably streaking them, and I don't want that to happen. So that just gives me enough, pushes those eggs apart enough there, just so that they have a little more dimension. There are still a few wet spots, but not enough to bother removing the tape. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And this is just taped down to it. It's actually a scrap from a hardware store, from a panel up, like a paneling display. I'll show you the back in a second so you know what I mean. But when you remove the tape, and this is just cheap dollar store tape, you want to pull it back at a really sharp angle. There we go. That one had come up during the painting session, I think. But let me get this under the camera here. So I try to like go at a really sharp angle, so the pressure is kind of coming, like, I think most of this just lifted up on its own. It's coming up so easily. Probably the heat helped it too, I bet, when I dried it, because heat does loosen adhesive. So I bet that's another tip you could use. Yeah, because like this is coming up so easy. But I generally can't keep anything in frame. I generally just pull it off at a really sharp angle so it doesn't have so much pressure. I find when you pull it at a blunt angle, like if I pulled it back like that, it's more likely to rip. Like if I have it kind of like that, or if I have it straight up like that, it's more likely to rip. But when I go off to the angle like that, kind of the tape is at a 45-degree angle where I'm pulling it off, it comes off a lot easier. I mean, this, I think the heat really helped undo it. But in general, when you are painting, that will help you from getting your paper torn. Also, you know, higher quality papers do tend to resist tearing. Really inexpensive papers without a lot of sizing will tend to rip more. But those are the ones that tend to be difficult to paint on. So if you're having a really hard time to painting on something, and then you you pull a piece of tape off it and it's just tearing it, the paper really is not suitable for watercolor. You've kind of got a bum wrap there, bum deal of paper. So there we can see this all done with this white border, which I always think makes it look a little bit more finished. And now I'm going to show you how to clean your palette. Again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask them. I'm just going to set this aside for a second so I don't get paint on it. Oh, that with the white border, I can see it looks a lot more finished to me.
Terry Woods, will you do some watercolor Christmas cards?
I will do that, Terry Woods. I like that idea. If you could put it on my request list in case I completely have a brain cramp, but I do love that idea and I would be happy to. So I'm just spraying this. I don't want to completely soak it too wet, so that's why I'm using this fine mister, but any spray thing you have is fine. So I can see that I contaminated my sap green. So I know this probably looks wasteful because I am just wiping it off and rinsing it, but it's better than wasting your paper because you've got color that you didn't intend. Okay, so I'm cleaning my brush. I think the red was pretty good. I don't think I got too much in there, but I'll just clean up any debris that I found. And that's all I need to do for that. And I think my blue needs a little bit of cleaning up. I must have got some yellow ochre in there. I'll waste a little bit more on that cleaning it, but still, it's going to be better than contaminating my next painting. And then I would just wipe it out with a paper towel. Since I don't have a paper towel, I'm going to use my dust rag here. I wouldn't use it if it was dusty, but I know I haven't dusted anything, so it's a safe bet. Another thing that works really good, if you don't like to use paper towels because of the waste, cloth diapers work really good, like the flannel ones, or even just buy a piece of flannel and wash it and cut it up. And you probably would want to sew it. In fact, I'd probably cut it up and hem it just so it doesn't fray. But I have a bunch of cloth diapers from when my kids were little, and they were already hemmed. They work great for rags. and they're as absorbent as paper towels. Sometimes your cloth rags aren't as absorbent as paper towels. Like old t-shirts have a little bit of stretch, like the jersey t-shirts, they tend to not be quite as absorbent, but old cloth diapers made from flannel are fantastic, and you can make your own if you don't have any. Just get half a yard of flannel, cut it into squares, hem it, and wash it. You're good to go. Don't be like, if they don't seem like they're working very good, wash them and make sure you don't use fabric softener, because fabric softener will make them less absorbent.
What about dryer sheets?
Dryer sheets are not absorbent.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like a synthetic. You want something natural like that. But you know, this gets my palette clean enough. I don't worry about staining. It bothers some people, but I find the older that a palette is, the better it works. And if you find that it's stained and it bothers you, use a magic eraser on it, or you could, some people like to scuff it up with a little sandpaper. I don't, because it's going to stain quicker if you scuff it with sandpaper, but this is good. This is all set to paint the next time. Put the lid on it and you're good to go. If you got any of your paints really, really wet, then I would let them dry before I put my lid on, because I like to actually store this palette up on its side, kind of tucked between a couple things in my desk, so it's out of the way. But that's how I clean it. Did we get any other questions in while we were?
Yes.
Okay,
Ian Jackson. I've seen some. Oops, chat moved it, bumped it up.
Oh,
I have seen someone staple the paper down to hold it into place. What do you think?
Yes, you can do that. You need to have a board that can accept staples. So you need like a type of plywood or wood that you can like put a staple into. You want to soak your paper, and then you lay it down on the board. Instead of using a tape, you staple it every couple of inches, and then you do have to deal with getting the staples out or getting the paper off without tearing it. I don't like to do that, but a lot of people will do that, and then they'll go over it with the gum tape. So it will pull it really, really tight while you're working. It's completely up to you. You run the risk of your staples rusting, or because they might be getting wet if you put the tape over it. Your probably best bet is going to be to cut the painting off and then take out the staples and remove the paper, so you don't end up tearing your paper trying to get it off. I've done it, like I've taken old stretcher bars and I have I've wet the paper, and it's kind of like a stretcher bars are kind of like a wooden frame, and then you would wrap the paper around, and I stapled them to the back, and that way I had watercolor paper on a canvas frame, and I would paint with that, and then when I was done, I could remove the staples and take it off and flatten it to frame it. But you lose so much paper on the edges that it seemed kind of wasteful. But there was a technique that I saw demonstrated at Bangor Art Society event once, and the artist actually took a bucket of water. He had it on a stretcher bar like that, and he wet the entire back of the painting with a bucket of water.
Wow.
Like he just dumped it, he soaked it, and so his it kept his paper wet but not his paint running all over the place while he was working on it. So it was an interesting technique. For me, it's a little too fussy, too much work and too much waste, but it's definitely an option. There's nothing wrong with it. Just be aware of those aspects of it, I guess.
And Bernadette Novak, how do you display your finished watercolors?
Well, sometimes I frame them. If I'm going to frame them, I do a matte and I put them in a frame with glass or acrylic glazing. Generally, though, I am painting and then I'm selling them. So what I do is I matte them and I put them in an acid-free clear archival bag, and then they can be flipped through on in a print rack in my shop. And I'm toying with the idea of just putting them in the bag without matting them, because I have like a stack probably 2 inches thick of watercolors that need to get matted and sold, and I just haven't had the chance to cut mats. But yeah, I think it does help them sell if they have a mat on them.
Sorry, I'm just typing about Amazon Prime. Someone was talking about it.
Oh yeah, boy, they're getting pushy with the Prime. I don't have Prime, and they keep trying to get me to sign up anytime I order something. It's like I have it because John and I do watch Prime TV. Yeah, well, Jason has it, and that's the thing. But if I'm Christmas shopping, especially if it's for him, I'm not going to order it on his account.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're all caught up.
Alrighty. That's great.
Yay!
Yay! Well, guys, thank you so much for coming back. I was kind of worried nobody would show up after taking 2 weeks off. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions after the show, just put them in the comments under the video, and I will keep checking in and answering any questions that come in afterwards. I want to thank everybody that joined us live here. Don't forget, today's last day to save 50% on the Creative Watercolor course. The link is in the video description. It's a discount link. If you just go over there without clicking that link, it'll show you full price. It's like $59. So you definitely want to click on that link if you want it, because it's going to save you $29, $30. I want to thank Jerry's Artorama for sponsoring today. All the supplies we use today you can find at jerrysartorama.com. And I arranged everything in a teacher's list. You can click that and go right to that. If you are a teacher, it's a great tool to put all of your class supplies together, and then people can decide what they want to purchase or not. It's really helpful because then they don't have to keep hunting and putting things into their cart. They can just see it, and it's nice and organized. So if you're a teacher, it's a great resource. I want to thank Sarah for being here.
Hello, goodbye.
Wait, let's do another painting.
And we're on.
And again, thanks for watching. If you like this, please leave a thumbs up before you go. It really helps my channel. And until next time, happy crafting. Don't forget about the brush video on Sunday. I think it'll be helpful to a lot of people.
Yes.
And bye. That's it.